Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Law&Crime Network. My name is Linda Kenny Bodden. We have a lot to cover here today on the network. Well, that looks to be the last witness of the day, and it may be the last witness till we anticipate the father of Imani Moss testifies, probably tomorrow morning at 9. You're looking at right now the picture of the mother who is on trial in a death penalty case, Tiffany Moss. She has not cross-examined any witness. I'd like to bring in my great guest who's been on with us before. You know her well, Francey Hakes. Francey, good afternoon. Francey is a child protective advocate. She's fabulous, as you know, and you've seen her being quoted in the Jeffrey Epstein case a lot down in Florida, protecting victims, and that's her thing, and that's a great thing, Francey.
Thank you,
I
Linda.
used to do a lot of this work as a prosecutor, not so much obviously as a defense attorney, because it's obviously very difficult and all, as you can imagine. But in this case, I have a couple questions for you, because you really are the expert. When you have a child there's 3 children in this house, this child apparently was targeted, okay? Imani. She was the actual child of the father here who's pled guilty, Iman. And the stepchild, the stepdaughter of Tiffany Moss is on trial. What kind of motives come into play that a stepmother would target, aside from the Cinderella story, target a specific child like Imani, who was apparently a wonderful girl?
You know, Linda, it's so tragic, and we see it so often. People say, but wait, they didn't abuse these other children. Why would we believe they would abuse just one and not them all? But that's what we see commonly.
But why is that? Is there some kind of psychological motive or what? What happens
Yeah,
here?
I think it's very complicated. It's definitely psychological. I think it has a lot to do with jealousy and targeting one child in the family for the parents' feelings of inadequacy and rage, and not taking them out on all of them because they have to think in their own minds, well, I'm a good parent, or I'm a good stepmom. I love these other 2. But it's just this one. She's a problem child. And so then they can also feel like they're kind of the victim too, where if it wasn't for how bad this child was, their whole family would be perfect.
And the father here, this is his natural daughter, and you listen to her. This morning when I was listening to her about school, the teacher's almost crying that what a wonderful kid she was. Why wouldn't dad make sure that his own child was protected from this abusive wife, or is the relationship more important than anything?
I don't know, Linda. I think that it often seems like the relationship is more important than anything, although it seems like you see it most often the opposite way, where women allow children to be abused or even participate in it to keep a spouse or a significant other happy. Here, it seems like you have the other way around. There is, by the way, simply no excuse, either morally or legally, for allowing your child to be abused and to die and to be starved to death in the way that happened to poor little Imani Moss.
Wow. We learned before, Francey Hakes, that Tiffany Moss is on trial was a teacher in education of children, which she's now accused of beating. I don't get it. We've had 2 trials now, the John Chuck trial and this, where we've had CPS in, and in this case we have prior conviction for child abuse. What broke down?
Linda, there are catastrophic problems in our child protective services in this country, all over this country, in every state of the union. I do not understand why we haven't fixed it before, but how many children have to die before we take seriously the need to completely overhaul and gut this system?
Yeah, and I made one mistake. She was in education. She was a caretaker. She wasn't a teacher. But in my mind, it doesn't really matter. Floor is yours, Francey.
You're absolutely right. And what we have here that's so tragic to listen to, when you heard Danny Porter give his opening statement, Imani herself begged for help. She ran away. She went to an adult. She told them what was happening to her. Time and again, she was sent back to that family, sent back to those people, and she was sent back ultimately to die. What are we going to do about it is my question.
Yeah, when she talks about the belt, it's really interesting because depending on what culture it is, my family was from the old Italian culture. The grandparents, the parents were off the boat. That's what they used in those days, was a belt or the threatening of the belt. But it kind of was more of a threat than an actual act. We saw we saw her arms, we saw everything, that she's got like what appears to be strap marks over her. I mean, I just don't understand why even Dad did not get involved at this point. Look at that. There it is. Look at it. We can see it right now. Look at that strap mark.
It's hideous. There is no defense for beating a child about the face and the arms with a belt. And you heard the testimony from the officer who said that Imani had raised her arms in front of her face to protect her face. This
right,
is
like I assume like the defensive wound, like we see somebody being attacked. Go ahead, you can do it, right? You raise your arms, right, so that your face doesn't get hit.
That's exactly it, Linda. And yet the child stayed in the abusive situation. Why? What person would we put in an abusive situation like that except a child? Why do we continue to put children back in abusive situations? I'll never understand it.
Okay, Francey Hakes, that's the grandmother. And apparently when Tiffany came to her after having tantrums, screaming and tantrums, she calmed down and yet went back to the parents. Now, isn't it true that kids who are abused do have this kind of acting out conduct that sometimes then the abusive parents hit them for or abuse them for?
Well, it's absolutely normal for children to have tantrums. And I think children who are being abused, common sense tells you, are even more likely to have tantrums or to behave or to have behavioral difficulties. We know that chronic child abuse causes all kinds of behavioral issues. And depending on the kind of abuse they're suffering, it could even lead to brain damage, like as if they were in a car accident because of the repeated traumatic injuries. So it's not surprising that the child might have been acting out.
Lots to talk about here, Francey Hakes. She said the father would now handle the discipline. The father now, Iman Hoss, has taken the deal. He's in jail, for life, supposedly. Okay, he's taken the deal. So isn't it possible that he actually committed the acts that caused the death of this child? And that's what the defense is going to be. Not that Tiffany Moss did, but he did. Because he's first in, he gets a deal.
Well, he was first in, he did get a deal, and certainly if there was a competent defense team actively defending Tiffany Moss, I expect that's the tack that they would take, but she's representing herself. She does have standby counsel, but she's representing herself. I don't think she's cross-examined any
Not
witnesses
one. She hasn't
yet.
cross-examined one. She hasn't asked one question. No one.
Right, so I don't think they're pointing the finger particularly
but
at Iman.
that brings me to the next thing. I looked up executions in Georgia for women. There's only been 2 women who have been executed, as you know, 1945, and this was not a good execution. This is a black woman who killed somebody when she was taken from a home. She was kidnapped by a white man at that point, and she killed him, and she said it was self-defense, and she was executed, and later on in 2005, she was posthumously pardoned. So that, let's face it, that was pretty bad, okay? And then in 2015, it looks like we have another woman who was executed because she may have killed her husband. I think there were, if I remember that case, I can't even pronounce it, Jasandir case. There were a lot of factors regarding that in that case. So here, she's not taking a defense. She doesn't have a defense team. Do you think the jury's going to execute her even if they find her guilty?
I don't know. I wonder if that's a ploy, to stand or to sit by herself, not ask any questions in the hope that the jury will sympathize with her and not put her to death, will not decide that the death penalty is the most appropriate punishment here. I think that might be her ploy. That might
or
be
maybe
her goal.
Do you think that she could just say, "I want to be in God's hands. Whatever happens, happens, and I'm not gonna fight it. I'm just gonna, take my punishment."
If that was the case, I would have expected her to plead guilt at the very beginning. I would have expected her to talk about that to the jury, and I don't think she did that. So I don't think that's her tact. I don't know what her tact is. People with this kind of evil mind, someone capable of this kind of cruelty against a child, I don't know what goes on in their head.
Well, we see it all the time here at Law&Crime. I don't know if we're ever going to know that. That was the mother, the defendant on trial, a death penalty murder, Tiffany Moses, for killing her stepdaughter. So that was the step-grandmother of Imani, who was 10 years old when she died, Francey Hakes. I think the motive just became clear there, didn't it, with the 2 other kids that the mother did not want to lose.
It did, and it seems obvious now, Linda. We talked at the very beginning of our session together here about what could be a possible motive for abusing one child and not others, and I think we know now. We know now that it was because Imani wasn't her own blood child. And I have to just say, that is not ordinary. We have lots of adoption in this country and stepchildren in this country who are well loved by parents who are not blood related to them. But in this case, it apparently turned out that she was incapable of loving Imani Moss.
Oh my God. So I think we also have one more clip to listen to. So that was Brittany Brown. That is defendant Tiffany Moss's sister. Obviously driving around Francey Hakes aimlessly. She said she wanted to help, but then she got out of an apartment. It's either get out of Dodge or maybe I just want to get away from myself. I don't know what it was, but let's go back to this case. This woman is handling herself as a death penalty case quickly. If she gets convicted, is that a reason for appeal?
It's not. It's her decision. The judge will have warned her. They will have had a hearing about it. She's got standby counsel that she can consult with at any time she wants. So trained lawyers who understand the death penalty and who have done those cases before. So no, she will try to claim it, I'm certain, that it was ineffective assistance of counsel since she's not even a lawyer, but she won't win on that count.
Oh, no. And do you think, let me just say to you, Francey, one question, do you think she's going to get the death penalty? Yes or no?
I say yes. This is a hideous case. I think so.
All right, well, we will see. Thank you, Francey. Your knowledge of this kind of area is so great. It's always great having you on the Law&Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. I'm going to be signing off for the day. Aaron Keller on the Daily Debrief is next. I will be one of his guests. We'll be discussing this tragedy that we see here. Only gavel to gavel, Law and Crime.